Thank you, Melissa. So, yeah, so 3 weeks ago, we touched on in class a little bit, creating textures with the palette knives. Just creating some texture on the barn, on the building. Very simple stuff using just a straight edge. On the list I sent out, and some of you may not have gotten it in times that didn't send it out to this afternoon, which is my fault. I apologize for being late. But there, if you didn't get it yet, there's an email waiting for you with some information in it. But it's also on this PDF that I sent out, which is in my second email from this afternoon. And most of the information is the same. There might be some couple differences, but this just lists some different techniques for creating texture. Everything all right?
Yes. I'm just, there's some feedback. I was just saying.
Oh, okay.
You can check mine. I think I'm good.
This was muted.
It's here.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's all you need.
It seems like these things make the marks that you're trying to avoid with the paint.
Some of them are, for sure.
Like blue, for sure.
But sometimes they're important.
Yeah, and they can be fun to use in landscapes and different things because the texture they create can be interesting when you want it to be. When you don't want the blooms or blossoms, they're better to be avoided for sure. Good call. Yeah, everyone's. Oh, okay, great.
So far.
And so earlier today,
Sorry, that's me again.
no, that's right. I did some experimenting with textures on this page here, using things like palette knives for scraping. I used some salt, which is what is in these things. And I used a fine grain. This is like a sea salt, table salt, and then this is a coarse grain salt. I think probably used for pickling and things like that, but they can create different textures. I didn't use it on these, but I've brought in some sandpaper that I could share in class. You can use a toothbrush for some spattering. Here's that piece of California video card I mentioned in the last class that I used for scraping. It's like I said, it's a little thinner than a regular credit card, which I like. And I cut it down to have different angles and points on it. Use a candle, which is just wax for wax resist. Got magic eraser, which is great for lifting. Natural sea sponges, which are great for texturing trees or things like that. And obviously, spritzing bottles, spraying bottles. A lot of times what I'll do too is I'll stick my fingers right in my water dish and then just flick it on my finger. Which creates little mini blossoms or blooms that are similar to what you get with salt, which is what these are here. What I'll do is I'll show you using different colors to experiment with, because certain texture effects will work better with certain colors and not so well with others. One of the things you'll probably notice on here is that the single wash colors, which I used burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, quinacridone gold, for the 6 color ones here. There's the single wash, and so I sprinkled some fine grain salt on that side and coarse grain salt on this side when it was wet. This one dried a little bit more, sprinkled fine grain salt and coarse grain salt. This one was a little drier still, but you can see the difference, I think, in the textures that are created. And part of this may be from timing, part of it may be from the makeup of the pigments. I did a little scraping in this one. And again, when you do a single wash, the scraping is going to be less effective or noticeable. It works better when you do it on a dark wash, a nice thick dark wash.
What did you use to scrape with?
So for these, I used, for the thin lines, I used this palette knife. And then and also removes. And for the thicker lines, I use these. And you can do things like when the paint's wet, just put your palette knife down and just scrape at an angle. And so that's what I did for these. When it was wet, I just put the palette knife down and scraped it. Scraped it that way, scraped it that way. And a lot of the scraping comes down to timing, and we'll talk about that. We can experiment with that. I did some more on this one too. And also on this one, you can see here, certain colors are staining, so when you scrape. So when you're scraping, sometimes with a staining color, you'll get the texture, but it's not going to go back to as white or a light color as you will on some other pigments, on non-staining specific. These were thick mixtures. This was a neutral tint, and this is indigo. And then these are burnt sienna and ultramarine blue, and sepia and cobalt blue. And these were just pigment experiments to see how the salt reacts in different ones. And these I put in very wet. These were still very wet when I put the salt in, and these I let dry more before I put the salt in. And you can see the difference. The timing of putting salt in is critical as well, because if you put it in when it's too wet, you won't get much going on, and then it's very hard to get the salt off. If you time it right, you can get these like sparkly effects or a little feathery texture, which can be nice for stars, snowflakes, texture in grass or plants, that kind of thing. But that's all I did with this. I just laid out different colors, let some of them dry more than others, experimented with different scraping techniques and sprinkling in some salt. But tonight what we'll do is we will experiment, and there's also, I wanted to show you, I can show you an example of what I use this on. I'll highlight my iPad. Oh. Back. And can everybody see that? So on these water streams coming out of the fountain, I used this candle.
Nice.
You can't see it now, but just the corner of the candle, and scraped it in the shape of those water streams, and then spattered with a toothbrush down at the bottom for the splashing effect. And with the wax resist, I have another example.
Wow,
This is
got melted wax on the paper.
no, nothing like that. Nothing like that. But it is permanent for the most part. When you use wax on a painting, it stays on there when you're done with the painting. Unlike masking fluid, which will take that off when you're done. But the wax, there are techniques I've read about to get the wax off, which sometimes involves an iron and a towel, and you heat it up and absorb the wax off. And I've never been interested in dealing with that. In the painting you're looking at, the wax is still there, but even looking at the painting itself, you really can't see it unless you tilt the painting and look at a certain angle under the light. You'll see a little bit of reflection, but it's not that noticeable.
Do you do this after you're done with the background painting, then you do the wax last?
No, I did the wax as soon as I did the drawing.
Oh.
So I did the sketch first, and then I did the wax because I knew where that wanted to be, and then I did the whole painting. And so everything I paint, I can paint right over that wax, and it won't let the paint stick. So use this is a rough textured paper to help get that broken line effect. But yeah, once you use that, it's on there and you just leave it. But it can give you a really nice effect, obviously.
And how did you do the splashes at the bottom?
Oh, sure. The splashes at the bottom are from a toothbrush. Not with wax. I used masking fluid. Thank you, Bruce. Yeah, masking fluid on the toothbrush. just poured some in a little bit of a little dish. Got some on the toothbrush and then just use my finger or thumb to flick it.
And is that at the same time as when you do the wax?
Yes. Yep, because I wanted that white, so before I put any paint down, I wanted to save all those whites.
Was it easy to take it off the toothbrush because of the nylon bristles? or-
It does come off pretty easily.
Okay.
I do usually put a little bit of soap on.
Okay.
I have so many toothbrushes that I use for different things. I don't always care about them,
Yes.
but it does, yeah, it does, it can be helpful to put a little soap on it. It'll help you get the masking fluid off, but it's, like I said, it's kind of a mess to work with anyway. But yeah, toothbrush would be helpful for getting that kind of spatter effect.
This would only work on paper that's very rough. Like dry, like.
Well, the spattering of masking fluid with the toothbrush can work on any paper, because that's gonna get the texture, but the wax itself is best for a cold press or a texture or a rough texture paper. Yep. I'm sure it'll work. It'll work on hot press and smooth paper as well, but you wouldn't get that rough of a line.
Yeah, that's what makes it look like water.
Yeah, which is, yeah, the effect you want to go for.
Do you experiment with different colors wax?
No, because I've only used the white, and this is actually the only candle I've ever used for this. But just so that it looked like the white of the paper. Yeah, and it's the same with this. This one's kind of a clear. It's not even a white,
I have this one,
Oh,
which
okay.
is closer.
similar to that.
Yeah.
And these are, I think you can do the same thing with the candle, but it's easy to shape it down into a point or whatever you need to do.
Right.
The important thing when you use the salt is you want to let it get to, we can look at this list here. This has the stages of wetness. It goes dry, damp, moist, and wet. And it has a description of what you'll see. A wet page is going to have obviously a reflective sheen. You're going to see that shine from it. Once you start to get to a slightly dull surface, that's a moist stage. When it looks dry, but it's still cool to the touch, that's the damp stage. And then dry is obviously when it's room temperature and there's no moisture at all left on the page. But one of the things that I've noticed is that when you put the salt in, when it's too wet, it's really difficult to get the salt off the paper. Whereas when you do it, when it's at more of a moist or damp stage, you get more of the effect, at least in some of these pigments. And it's much easier to get the salt off. Sometimes you can even just tap your paper and it'll fall off.
Where you're most likely to use this technique, like when you're painting.
It can be used in all kinds of things. I mean, if you're doing a portrait, you can see some of that effect in the hair, in a beard. You can do it in the background for an effect. When you're doing a landscape, it's great texture for grasses or trees or bushes, that kind of thing. It really depends. It's just kind of, I mean, even on animals, you could use it for fur and things like that.
I have a question.
Oh, sure.
I've seen in some backgrounds, neutral backgrounds, where there's like these really soft bubbles. And I was wondering how they got those. I mean, there might be like gray paint, very neutral, background, but it's circular.
Are they kind of perfect circles?
They look like it.
The bouquet. or the-
It could be like a bokeh
Yeah,
effect.
yeah.
I know that I haven't experimented with it much, but if you use like a rubbing alcohol and just use it, like just dip your brush in it and then just touch or the end of your toothbrush or whatever it is, just dip whatever you dip in there and just touch it to the paper. It can leave a soft circle. Another thing you could do is use a paper towel and put it around the glass so that you get the lip of the glass on there and press that into the paper and lift paint off and get a circle with that. Is that,
You could use a,
Interesting to
s-
try.
I haven't
circle
tried
pencil?
that too much, but
a circle stencil, all different size circles, and put it down
oh yeah,
and lift.
with your brush or
Yeah.
a paper towel.
Yeah.
Yep. Another thing,
Or
I don't have
the-
one.
The magic eraser too, any of.
Yes, yep,
Yeah.
yep. Does anybody have a coin? Dime or a nickel or anything?
Or a cork.
Yeah, good luck, right?
Cork.
Because
You're having
another,
some wine, you could really have fun.
another technique is you can put like a penny or a dime or something in a paper towel and wrap it up so that you have the flat round surface. And then when you have a wet wash, you push that into it, lift it up, and you'll get a nice circle.
Yeah, we used that a few years ago in the beginning.
It's a great technique for putting the moon in or the sun in the sky. You want to be careful though that you have the proportions or the scale correct. So
Yeah.
you don't want to use a quarter if you're doing the sun because that would be too big. Unless you're doing a very zoomed in view of the sun. But the perspective on those is I have failed at those in the past, do a nice wash for the sky and then lift out a nice little sun and realize when I put the painting in, like it's like a UFO or something. It's just way too big. It just does not look right. So the scale is important on these things. But when you're doing your drawing, you can pay attention to those things and, just get an idea of what size you want that to be. And maybe maybe a coin isn't the right thing to use. I've also used things like a flat round back end of a pencil to kind of do the same thing and get a round, smaller round lift with that. But almost anything like that'll work.
Can I add something that I hadn't realized until I took a workshop? Water can be used as a resist. So you're gonna, let's say, paint a large background with a street light. So you put water where the street light would be, and then you paint your background, and as the background kind of creeps into this water area, you continue to lift it. And when you're finished, you're gonna get a really nice, soft light.
Glow.
That's a great note, yeah.
That is great.
Another thing that you can use for scratching is a lot of paintbrushes, or some paintbrushes will come with a chisel tip. And those can be used as well. Some of these actually I used, some of these thicker scratch outs, I used this handle on. And if anybody in class wants to come take a look at this afterwards, of course, we want to.
Good turn. Temperature good?
Doing great, yeah, thank you.
Could you just pass it
There
around?
will be
course,
music
yeah.
tonight, so. it's
So we
not
hope,
bothers you.
sure, we hope so.
No worries, thank you.
Devin, you mentioned about lifting and scraping and so on. If you go in too early, you can actually make dark lines,
Yeah, I was gonna show that, I think I have an example of that in there as well.
like veins on a leaf.
Yes.
Yeah, so you can do the scratching. Bruce was just saying two different ways, whether you're using, a palette knife or the brush end or your fingernail or whatever it is. If you go in too early, you'll dent the paper and all the color will flood in and leave a dark line. If you wait until you're at pretty much the moist to damp stage, damp is probably too dry, but the moist, you want to stay away from the wet, but the moist stage where you have a slightly dull surface, the sheen is gone, you have no reflection really, but the paint's still wet. That's when you want to go in and scrape out and you'll get a nice highlight or a white line. And what was I love that saying that you had, there's 2 times for scraping, there's too early and too late. It's a tricky thing to do and to time it right. But once you kind of recognize what the paper needs to look like, it makes it easier. Does anybody online have any questions?
I have a couple of questions, Devin.
Sure,
So-
sure.
I did hear somebody once talk about using baby oil somehow with watercolor. Do you know anything about that?
That's a
No.
new one for me. I've not heard of it.
Okay. And
But
then
my guess is it would act like a resist, like Bruce was talking about the water.
right,
But it'd be fun to experiment with.
right. Yeah. I thought I had some, but I don't, so I don't know.
Yeah.
The other thing I heard about is I read somebody talking about using gesso on the paper first before painting. Has that
And yeah, there's different media you can use on a paper to prep a surface.
uh-huh.
And those are things I've never experimented with.
Okay.
Because I know people use it ground and you can paint it on like wood, I think, or metal, and then watercolor paint on that.
I've done ground right on watercolor paper.
Oh, okay. And Linda's saying you can even do it right on watercolor paper
It's
itself.
a neat effect.
I'll have to try that too.
What is it that you use right on the paper?
Ground.
Is it called
It
what?
comes in it's called ground, yeah. You can get transparent ground, white ground, you can,
Okay,
comes in looks like hand cream in a jar.
Okay, and it's that kind of texture? Does it feel like hand cream?
I would use an old brush to slap it on your paper. The person I took a class from, she just slapped it on haphazardly. And then we did it and we painted things like turnips underground and above ground, like you're getting a slice view, things like that. Yeah, and it turned out nice. It gives it just a different feel. You know, I have a picture, I'll show you.
okay. Does it change the texture of the paper?
It does.
Does it have like a grit to it? Does that help?
It's more like rough, I guess, paper
Okay,
in a way.
okay.
I'll bring it, last class, I'll bring in the 2 paintings I did and pass them around and say,
That'd be
they're
great.
little, we just did little.
That'd be great. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see that. Very cool.
Devin,
Yes.
I have a sample of, I don't know if it was a long time ago. This is one of the first pieces I did, but it was, I think it's gesso, if you want me to show it.
Yeah, I'll spotlight you. There you go.
Oh. Let me get out of it.
Oh, interesting, yeah.
So that's Longwood Gardens, obviously. Let's see.
It's
Oh,
trying
I've
so
got this
hard.
weird thing going on with my computer.
I think we get a feel for it. It almost has, there's a surface. I won't call it a paper. I'm not sure if it technically is a paper, but it's called UPO.
Mhm.
You may have
Yeah,
like a plastic.
it was, I don't think it was gesso. It was a little bit thicker than that, and it acted kind of like a plaster almost. And then
Okay.
you put it in a texture, dry it, and then because I got those tiny little dots for the drips as well as that big swath of things. So
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, it just had the effect in your painting there looked like what I've seen on the UPO painting. And I've never used that either, but I think it doesn't absorb the paint. The paint just sits on top, so you can get weird textures.
that is true. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was that called? It's the gesso?
I don't recall because it was really a long, let me see if I wrote on the back. No. No, I think it's gesso or some kind of plastery thing. I'll ask my teacher because I still take a class with her.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, very cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I tried gesso once and I was trying to do like Greek columns or something, and it was great for the texture, but the surface was actually up and down, raised and lowered, you know, because it's like you're putting a plastery thing on top. So to get watercolor on top of that,
That's what I've always
It
imagined.
was-
It seemed
you know, it was odd.
right.
Unless my watercolor wasn't thick enough.
I imagine, and I may be wrong, but my guess is that sounds like you're creating a situation where you've almost got a textured paper, but it's going to act like hot press.
Doesn't absorb.
It doesn't absorb, it's going to sit on top, but with those materials, the ground or maybe the gesso, it gives you a little bit of a texture that is different than just a flat hot press paper. But it might act like that. I could be wrong, but that's what it sounds like to me.
Well, I think for the gesso, yes.
Okay.
See if I can find that.
Interesting. So kind of the sky is the limit when it comes to what you can use to create texture in watercolor. I know there's an artist, Dan Marshall. He likes to shock people, or maybe that's not the right way to put it, but he does shock people when he spits in his painting.
Oh my.
Instead, he just gets a totally random wet splash texture. And to each their own, but it works for him. But there are so many different ways you can get texture. And so let's experiment. Anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, don't forget the fingers.
Oh, absolutely.
Wonderful bunch of grapes painted where the grapes is basically the guy's.
That's a good point too. Yeah, applying paint is a similar way. There's almost an endless number of ways you can do it. And they can all create neat effects or textures or looks, marks, which is also very important, of course. But
And you know, you were talking about circles and
Mhm.
painting like the rim of a cup and putting it down even to make like a wreath. And you
Right.
put it down a number of different times off center.
Oh,
So it gives the beginning of like a wreath. You know how you all say, or you may not say if I say it from them, but when you get a new brush, the plastic round part that fits over the bristles so that they don't, you can save those, they come in different sizes. And that's nice
Oh,
for,
okay, yeah.
yeah, you can dip them either in alcohol, like anything like that, and use those too for like underwater bubbles or,
Oh, that's neat.
Oh, yeah. Very cool idea.
So, so recently Annie Strack, at least in the last couple of years, I guess, has started putting these backgrounds. She paints, water scenes, marine scenes and so on, often birds, and the backgrounds are circles. They're circles.
It's not like yeah, they're birds like seagulls in water, but the background isn't a beach scene or sky or anything like that. It's like it's a pattern of circles.
Yeah.
And very abstract.
who is it?
Annie
Annie
Strack.
Strack.
STRACK,
CK.
Strack,
Yep.
okay.
Anyway, I don't recall how she makes those. And
You know,
they're quite uniform, as I recall.
Yeah, she does it a lot in a lot of her paintings. And I've taken one of her workshops and she did not use that in that workshop. So I don't know how she does it either. We happened to paint a boat and it was normal scene of a, boat in the water. So, but yeah, I'm curious to know how she does that too. Because she does get, some of them are negative and positive sometimes too.
One of them was an award winner recently, as a matter of fact.
They're in the Philadelphia Watercolor
Could've been,
Society
I
show,
can't
I
remember
think.
which one.
What
think
does she
so.
use to create the circle? And does she fill it in? Is it filled in, you mean, or
Often it's
or it's
lighter
just,
circle itself, the interior is lighter than
okay,
the
yeah,
surrounding, but.
And I feel like I've seen
Take
it.
a look.
I will,
Yeah,
yeah.
I feel like some of the circles are lighter and some of them are darker, so it's.
Just like, here's a,
What's her name?
Annie Strack.
It almost looks like she has a,
STRACK.
yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
Let's see.
Like she puts some sort of surface down on
Doesn't
top
mean
of
they wanna
it.
put that on your.
Oh, you mean way
Yeah.
in the background? Yeah, Lisa
do
Best, who did the ground, also did that technique with shelving, the rubber shelving
Oh, yeah.
things that you can buy, and she would cut it in a strip and paint on it and then put it down and it has the holes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could be.
No, thank you.
She must have to mask out those birds though.
I don't know the technique she used.
So here, I can show
Yeah,
you.
I did take a class with her one time also. Do you remember specifically painting?
I just brought up a photo on here. I'll
With
share
a
this
water
one.
scene, two boats in it, masked out the entire boats. I mean, the boats were pretty good size. Just masked them all out. with the masking. And,
Yeah, that's it.
Is it showing up?
Oh,
Yes.
there it is. That's it. Yeah. I swear that's what it looks like.
So yeah, some
Although
of
some
these,
look like circles and some look rectangular.
some are lifted, some of them have like an outline kind of effect.
Yeah.
But it's a mix, and it's just kind of an abstract background, but yeah, they work.
I like it. It's very different.
Yeah, and I think they're all similar when she uses that effect, but let me see if I can close that. There's another one.
At the bottom of one of those kitchens.
Oh, there's another, yeah.
Mhm.
Now, if you painted oil or acrylic, they have their different techniques that they can use, right?
I'm sure.
On the same one.
Let's see. Did anybody else online have any questions or things they wanted to add?
Those backgrounds that you were talking about,
Mhm.
they look a lot like that jelly plate printing techniques that people use.
Hmm.
And I can't help but wonder if I mean, I don't know, but she could prepare the background using one technique and then go back and paint the watercolor after.
That's very true. She may mask the birds out, take care of the whole background,
Yeah.
and then go in and paint the birds. That's very true. Yeah. But it is
That
interesting because
Melissa?
that's mostly,
Ask her about, what is the jelly plate technique?
oh, what is, Linda's asking, what is the jelly plate technique?
Oh, so there are these, I don't know, they're like rubber plates. I don't know what they're made of, but they're clear and you can you can layer paints on top and then you can layer I guess pieces of stuff that you use to lift up some of the paint and it leaves behind a design. Then you put paper down on top of it and it'll print the design on your paper. It's really it's cool. They call it jelly plate printing and it's spelled GELLI. And people
Okay.
use all different kinds of mediums and all different kinds of tools to create different effects. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll have to Google that. That's a
Yeah.
new one for me too. But it sounds like a transfer process, like you're printing
Yeah. Yep. Jelly
and the rest of it.
printing. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
So I guess with everything, you sort of plan before you start.
Oh, most definitely. Yeah,
When you do these kinds of effects and you have them in mind.
Definitely. I would say when you're doing when you're in the stage of doing value study or a color study, that would be when you would want to plan those things out. You could experiment with them or give them kind of, in those little paintings, the effect that you're looking for just kind of represented, and then actually do that technique on the larger version. Because it may not work as well in a small size to do those kinds of textures, but does that make sense? Is that?
Yes, it does. Sometimes I like painting something like, I'm not happy with it, it looks horrible. And so I think I'll try some kind of special effect, that it's already dry and I've just ended up making it work.
So in those situations, sometimes, and it's an experiment too, because the type of paper that you're using, the type of paints you're using, if you're using a staining color, it's going to stain the paper and then you'll have the color there forever. But if you, like, there are times where I know in a painting, I had the sky done and didn't like it, but it was all dry and, I'd been looking at it for a week. Realize I'm not happy with it, so I don't mind if I mess it up. I want to experiment with it, and I'll flip painting kind of upside down so that the horizon's up here and the sky is down here, and just spray it with water and let as much paint run off as it wants to. And then if need be, I can go in with a paper towel and scrub it and try and lift even more paint off. So you can work with it that way. You don't want to get too aggressive with it because you don't want to damage the surface of the paper if you want to try and repaint on it again. But that can work. Yeah. It's just, it's an experiment with the colors you're using and the paper you're using. But yeah, it can be done. Absolutely. It's a good question.
And what are you doing with the sandpaper?
The sandpaper, I think I can show a sample of that as well, actually.
Yeah, show picture of me.
Yep. Let's see.
Show a picture of what? Oh, okay.
They're too. Somewhere like we're dark. Yeah. It's fun.
Can everybody see that? So I used sandpaper here in the water to get some of that sparkle and the horizontal streaks.
That looks cool.
And I think I probably used a coarse grain sandpaper, maybe something like a 60 or 100 grit. And then on the beach side where the water is kind of receded and you get little bubbles that show up, I used a finer grain grit sandpaper and scraped it in following the perspective. So there's the scrapes on the left side kind of angle towards the right, In the
Mhm.
middle, they go straight back, and on the left, on the right, they go to the left. So following the perspective, but it was once the paint's dry, you can go into the light touch. And this is destructive, I'll call it. You don't want to go back in and try and paint over when you've done that, because you've wrecked the surface of the paper and you'll get weird dark spots and all that. But in this case, I thought it worked out really well.
Mhm.
And that is Bruce.
And you did some like horizontal, but those you did like vert,
Correct.
okay.
Yeah, so out in the ocean, I wanted, that surface is horizontal and flat, so I
Yeah.
wanted to stick with moving the sandpaper side to side.
Mhm.
And then in the foreground, wet sand area, I would follow the perspective.
Yeah, the water's actually going.
Because it's receding away from you. But if you draw all those or scratch all that bubbles going straight out, the perspective will be
Would be
completely
off.
wrong.
Yeah. Very nice. Always need help
So,
with
I'm glad you
perspective.
asked.
So did,
Perspective is an important one.
did you put it on a surface, like the sandpaper on, like, did you wrap it on a
No,
cube or something, or you just put it on your finger?
yeah, I just put just a small piece right on my finger, just scratched it.
Very
We'll
cool.
experiment with some of that here. I can show you how that works. But what we'll do here is. Stop sharing. And so real quick, I'll do some. I'll kind of section this out. I'll do this in stages. I'll do. Make a tic-tac-toe board or something.
Mhm.
Something like that. And so I'll use this candle, literally just a candle. And in this square here. Do some streaks like that, like that, and we'll see what we get when we paint it. And in the one above it here, I'll use this wax resist. And I'll do. Something like that. And then we'll paint those.
It froze. Oh, there it is. It's back.
Oh, okay. We there? Okay. And so I'm just gonna mix up, doesn't really matter what we're using here for the wax resist part. I'm just gonna mix up some dark paint so that it stands out nicely. And then just for fun, I'll charge with some other color in there. But you kind of get the idea. That is the wax resist. And again, that just stays on the paper. And then this one here. No messages here, I just made some lines. But again, same kind of effect. You can see it's just the wax that's clogging up the paper and it's not letting the paint sink in, and it'll push the paint away. And it doesn't matter how many times you scrub it, that wax is in there and it's not going anywhere. And now I'll go ahead and what I'll do is I'll just do.
And you also could kind of dry brush the wax on so that you could get sparkly.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and that's,
Instead of a solid line.
let me do that. Try,
So what do you mean?
Just hitting the tops of the mountains and paper, so to speak.
so I'm just gonna really lightly hit an area here. then you can just get kind of a sparkle effect, just using the texture of the paper. Do some scraping. For scraping, you want some thick, dark paint. Works best. Doesn't need to be black or brown, it can be green or blue. You want it to be pretty thick. And then this is all about timing. Start mixing. And then I'm gonna kind of keep an eye on that. And see if we can. You can kind of see the sheen on that when it's wet.
Yep.
You can see the reflection. And I'm gonna let that sit for a minute or two, and I'm gonna keep an eye on it. And what I'll do is we'll do scratching on that one. I'll put some salt on this one. Let that set just a minute for the salt. And we'll do some scratching on that one, salt on that one. We'll try and do a little. The sponges I haven't used a whole lot. We'll experiment with those. Let's see if we can get a little lifting and then also a little painting with the sponge. Using a natural sponge, I'm going to wet it. Squeeze most of the water out. And then we'll see what kind of texture we get. And if it lifts at all. I don't want it dripping with this, sure. We'll just see what happens. So, very random lifting texture. And that was done just, as it was wet, didn't need to wait for that. And I'm looking here. It's just starting to set in spots.
Mhm.
And that was probably ready for some salt. And it doesn't take much. I'm taking some coarse grained salt and I'm just going to drop a couple of pieces of water. And I'm on an angle, which some of it's falling off the page. And so we'll let that sit. And so these, when you do the salt, you're going to let the paint dry all the way. And I'll drop some.
Is that fine?
This is the fine grained salt here. I'll drop that on this side. I can tell the heavier strokes are still a little shinier than the lighter parts. So we'll see what kind of variation we get there. I'm still looking, I'm probably at about scraping stage here. So we'll try and make some marks with this. And I'm just gonna scrape. And scrape, so you can kind of see some,
No need.
just some mark making some shapes. And I'll try and do, like I said, we're saying that this one is nice with the flexibility because you can do really random branch textures. Just letting the blade kind of go the way it wants. Little branchy effects. And of course, you want branches overlapping. That's always that's good. Just to give you an idea how that works. You can use a little plastic card. Starting to dry down here, so I'm scraping a little less. But it's all timing, so maybe you don't want as bright of a white. Wait a little bit longer, and you'll get a little bit less scraping. Those are some of those effects. And then I'm gonna paint one more here. For some sandpaper. Want to let that dry completely and the sandpaper that way. Actually. Yeah,
What paper are you using?
this is a Hanamura 140-pound rough paper, which is partially why you can see the texture in the waxes on these. If this was hot press paper, these would probably be bright white lines. But the texture is why you see those little speckles in the scratch out of the wax resist part. And same thing with the scratch out. A little smoother there. Or that's actually the wax too. We do a little. Very random, and you could let that dry and then go in with a thicker mix of different color and do the same thing right on top. And it will just layer that texture. See the just random texture. Maybe
You wet the sponge.
I just wet the sponge a little bit. On these natural sponges, they're very stiff.
When you're, so it's, yeah, you wet it,
And so wetting it just makes it a little softer and a little more pliable.
right?
And I just thought I'd try. See if that goes. So maybe that's an effect you want, who knows, maybe not. But this is all just about experimenting and seeing the kind of textures you can make with these different tools. I'll do some saran wrap here. So I just grabbed a little piece of saran wrap and I'll crumple it. And so I'm going to, I think that's too dry. Let me do another.
Probably real graphs and stuff.
That is something else I was going to mention. I'm glad you brought that up because I've seen people paint, not with watercolors necessarily, mostly with either gouache, acrylics, or oils. But they will take a branch with leaves on it that they found, and they will cover it in paint and just slap it on a paper. And you get a little bit of a spray from it, so you get like a little randomness in it. But it creates beautiful branch with leaves on it, you know, with one smack on your paper. It's pretty fascinating. And so anything like that, you could use, you know, leaf, flower, petal, or whatever, anything like that. You leave little textures in your paper.
So what's in your head when you do the ceramic, like you say, oh, I'm gonna use this for
It's
what?
yeah, you put it in wet paint
Yeah.
and then let it sit and dry. And Probably should grab a little bigger piece. That's all right, it's all right.
You're
I'll
welcome
try
to
to
do
get
it,
some-
because I have. a ton of it.
There we go. So what I'll do is I'm gonna stick
You
that
might use it for background.
right in there.
Okay.
So I'm just sticking that right in the wet paint and we'll let that sit.
You crinkled it up a little there.
And so we can do
Yeah.
things.
And then I would apply something heavy on top of it, just let it dry. At least that's the way I've seen it.
When it comes to spattering, wear an apron or old clothes. I'll try and get this one on camera a little bit.
That's good.
That's tricky. It's tricky.
But for me, it would get him long.
So there you can just get a really, so when I was talking in the last class about putting some chaos in your painting, and I thought that's probably a wrong word to use. This is what I'm talking about. Like, you can't paint that with a brush.
Yeah.
But if you used white gouache on a black background, it would look like sparkling stars, or, you know, you can get all kinds of different effects with that.
Yep.
Variation. You can overlap colors. But it's just, again, the spattering is really random and unpredictable. But a lot of times in a painting, that is really effective.
It's been described as a way of getting energy into your painting.
It is, that's a great word for it. There's well, when I first got into watercolors, Carl Martens, and I believe his last name is Maartens. He is a watercolor painter who grew up in, I guess, like the woods in Sweden or something, and memorized all the birds.
Oh, wow.
And so he can paint the birds from memory in incredible detail,
Oh, wow.
but he paints them on full sheets or larger of watercolor paper,
Oh, wow.
and he will use bowls, like a salad bowl full of pigment of different colors, and a brush that is as big as the palm of my hand. And he'll put the paper out on the floor, dip the brush in some really dark brown paint, and then just look at the painting or look at the paper and just smack it with a brush and then scrub the brush into the paper back and forth. And he gets these completely random, natural, very organic shapes.
Oh.
And then I look at it and think I can make the wing and then the beak, and he does, and he just creates this in front of, but he calls it putting energy in the paper. And putting energy in the painting. He said he starts every painting that way. He just loads a brush and smacks it into the paper, scrubs it around, and then works with what he has. And it's that randomness, that chaos, that organic, unpredictable. You can't design and paint it like that. It's only the random nature of it. But it really can create amazing, and I'll try to remember to send a video link out for the video I saw. It was almost a religious experience because I love nature and birds. And so when I saw his work and his story, I just thought, this is like the man. You know, it was pretty incredible. But it's worth watching. His work was just incredible.
And what is his name again?
Carl Martens. It's I believe it's Karl, and then I think it's Maartens. But there was a specific video on YouTube that is many years old at this point. But I'll see if I can find that and send that out in the follow-up email. It's phenomenal. It's really, it's amazing. I was trying to think if we got, I was going to do sandpaper on that one.
Thanks.
And so right now I can tell that is at the damp stage. It's not shiny at all. It's totally matte, but it's cool to the touch. So I know it's not dry yet. So I'm gonna let that sit a little longer. And I think my guess is I'm not gonna get a lot of texture out of the salt in these, which it could be a result of the pigment or I didn't time it correctly. But I can experiment with different pigment and see if I can try something. Let me do a, I'll just create a section in there. But that's sort of the experimental nature of doing these techniques as well, is when you're dealing with the randomness and the kind of chaotic nature of some of these. It really is, you're giving up some of the control to the technique and to the materials, and you're kind of gonna get what you get from it. You can steer it and guide it and hope and try different things, but you're sort of at the mercy of the materials themselves, the paint, the water, the scraping, whatever it is.
The
Humidity, water, absolutely, whether or not you've pre-wet paper, all those things can matter.
Have you used these techniques in your own paintings? Some? Isn't that scary, but, well, if you have a nice painting, and then you gotta put these in.
I can tell you, when I did that painting of Bruce, and I loved the painting of Bruce, when he's out there fishing, and I thought, I need to get texture in the water. And I thought, I'm gonna try sandpaper. And I knew I might be ruining this painting. But, and it was nervous, a nerve-wracking moment, no doubt about that.
You're pretty
But it's-
precision in most of your paintings, that's why.
That's what I like about these techniques, is they sort of get me away from that. I like to try and loosen up, and that's why I try and work with bigger brushes than I might initially think of. Try and hold the brush back further on the end, because I'm giving up a little bit of control that way. Those types of things, I think, I'm trying to loosen up my paintings and get more impressionistic, and those techniques can help.
When you use the sandpaper, paint was dry, like.
Totally dry, totally dry. Yeah, that's what I'll do on this one
And
here.
then you put it down, you ground it in a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, let's see, I'll take a piece of this. So it doesn't take much, I'm just gonna take a little piece of it. And I'll hold it on my finger like that. And I'm not gonna do it yet, but I'll do it on this one here. It's close, maybe 5 more minutes. And I'll be able to hit that with some sandpaper. I thought what I would do too is try and get. I'm gonna try a different pigment. I'm just gonna make a spot here. And see if I can get a little more texture with the salt. Big paint, charge that up. And you can see the paint running. I'm kind of propping it up a little bit, just lowering the angle. But I'm gonna watch that. And when it's at the right stage, I'll drop some salt in it and see what happens. Oh, another thing I can do is.
I got a little bit of texture there, but.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, more pressure, leave it until it's fully dry.
Okay.
That's.
So.
Yeah, if you actually can do it earlier.
I have different spray bottles that I use. This is a very fine mist sprayer, and so is this one here. I call these my spray bottles or spritzers, and then this one I call a spitter. It is.
Yeah.
It doesn't
It
give a
is.
fine mist, it
No.
really will just kind of spit random dots. And I'm gonna let that set a little bit, and then I'll spray that with this, and we'll see what kind of texture we get. But it needs to set up a little bit. You can see it's still too shiny. We want that to get to a kind of a matte
I like how you-
and luminous shade.
Oh, yeah, thanks.
Mhm.
Even though I don't, been really sure.
Yeah.
No, take it on and it's dry. Leave it on too long.
Let me do that.
Bear with me while I wait that out. This one was up close.
That was a boring.
I started out by picking it up here, then I moved it.
Oh, you did the queen?
She gave me a pen.
Oh, that's right. So while I'm waiting for that to dry, anybody online have any questions? All good?
Devin, I thought of a question. So I tried to do the sandpaper, but the color of the sandpaper turned the paper that color.
Really?
Yeah, like this was my sandpaper. And it left behind that color.
What grit is the sandpaper?
220.
220, that's probably.
Oh no, I'm sorry, it's 320.
Oh, that's gonna be too fine. That's almost smooth paper.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm using 100 grit.
Oh, okay. All right. So I assumed because we were working on fragile watercolor paper to use very fine grit, but no,
Yeah.
opposite.
Yeah, I think on Bruce's painting, I used the 100 grit. It might have even been the 60 or 80.
Okay.
It was pretty aggressive, and I used the two different ones, so I may have been both the 100 and 60.
Okay.
But you can get aggressive. You can use, I should say, you can use an aggressive sandpaper. It's just all in the touch.
Gotcha.
But we'll do that now because I think I can. Dry. And the salt you want to put on when it's kind of in a damp state.
Can I try some of your sandpaper?
Of course, which one do you like?
Well, what's the difference again?
This one's 100 grit, and this is 60, so this is a much rougher paper.
Okay, for your water, which one did you use? This one? Okay, thank you. And it has to be totally dry.
Totally dry. Otherwise, it'll really rip on the paper.
Okay, then I'll wait a little.
That's good. The other way you can kind of protect it, if it's totally dry, is if the paper's buckled, it's still wet, but that's pretty dry, so I can.
Yeah.
I'll hit this with a little sandpaper. You can kind of see how it gives you a random texture, but you
Yeah.
can put some perspective and some directionality into it.
Yeah.
And that is the 100 grit.
Mhm.
And if I try the 60 grit, which is very aggressive,
Okay.
it's going to create even more of that texture. And what it started to do,
Yeah.
it literally is, it's all fuzzy. It's taking the surface of the paper off. So that's why once you do this, there's no going back.
Yeah,
to paper.
but you can push it back with a spoon.
The texture of the paper back.
You can push it back with a spoon, like the metal spoon.
But my guess is that because you've totally taken the sizing off,
Yeah,
it will still give you unexpected results.
probably,
I
but
think
at least people can't tell.
Let's see. Keep an eye on this guy here. It is well, right at the stage. I want to put some salt. So let's see what I get. And I'm just going to go with some coarse grain salt up here. I'm gonna put some here too. And let's see, you can see I'm not putting a lot of salt in there, just a little bit. You want to kind of give it room to do its thing, but we'll see what that does. I've had very mixed results. I've seen some amazing textures created with salt. The different pigments I've experimented with, I get really mixed results with it. It's kind of hit or miss. And then I'm gonna lift this saran wrap off too. And see what we got here. So there. Very, I think very cool, very random texture there.
Was that scraping?
That's the saran wrap.
Oh, okay,
Yep.
cool.
So I just kind of, just spread it out a little bit, and flattened it up, and then just pressed it right into the wet paint, and then let it sit.
I've used saran wrap for a bunch of rocks and I like it.
It
I
really
do
does.
like it, because
Yeah.
then you can look and see how you want to form them by
And
adding.
you
Yeah.
have some control over the texture because you can kind of really crumple this up or leave
Yeah.
it a little bit more flattened and stretched out. So that'll give you those different effects. But yeah, the saran wrap is great and the salt is great. And just be careful because when you're doing this, you can get paint on your hands very easily. And then you do not want to touch your face or rub your eyes or touch clean paper. Or your rolled paper towels. Yeah, I'm not sure that's gonna do much texture either. It's interesting, because that's a kind of a mix of some palette mud, but a lot of raw sienna. And you can kind of see just how much it's granulated on its own.
Is that the fine salt or the?
This is the coarse grain salt.
Okay.
And I pretty much let it go until most of the sheen was gone. But it may be a situation where this pigment isn't gonna really react too much with it. And then I'll show you. I don't know if I have a picture here. I don't. Another way to get nice texture is to use a little spritzing or spitting bottle. And I'll do it on this one here. I'll just give it a little. Spread the dots there. Let's see, maybe not. There you go. Just kind of some random dots in that spray. I'm gonna let that sit for a second, and then I'm just gonna scrub it real quick with a paper towel.
Later, it's a while.
Are you getting good results with the salt?
I just the salt.
This looks like frog skin.
After a few minutes.
So yeah, on the salt, if it's too wet, you'll get dark spots where the salt crystals are.
Yeah, because I never put that on.
And then when it's, you'll get this kind of effect with it when the forming is right and if the pigment's right.
Yeah,
So this is indigo.
but it took it a while to do that.
It does, and it's the kind of thing that's why I suggested bringing multiple pieces of paper, because you can do the salt technique on one piece and just set it aside, let it dry, and still work on something else.
So you're supposed to get some kind of blooming effect from the salt, is that what you're saying? Or is-
It is, yep. And let's see if I can time this right. I wanted to let that water set and kind of reactivate the paint that's underneath it, because it's pretty much dry. And I'm just gonna push down and then scrub off in one direction to see what. But there you can see also random white specks just from where the paint was reactivated and then lifted off. And I use this technique. I hadn't, I wish I could show it. I should have brought it. Painting, was actually the plein air painting. You guys have seen it. It had the big tree with the barn in the background, and then the shadows kind of stretching out, and the building in the middle kind of coming out this way with some background trees. in the corner down in this area where it was very dark, because I had the tree in the foreground and then a shaded part of the building that it was in front of, it was very dark. And because I had the tree was dark itself, the branches and the leaves were all dark, and then the building that it's next to was in shadow, so it was very dark. I used this spritz technique where once it was all dry, I spritzed it a little bit in random spots and then used the paper towel to lift out some highlights, and it just created a little bit of leaf texture or like little spots in the grass for some texture. So I'm not really painting all of those little things in there, but I'm getting detail and contrast and visual interest in that dark area just by doing that little spritz and scrubbing out. But it really just gives you that kind of texture. And this is what I do. So I'm just going to paint on the back of this one. We'll do some fun with blossoms.
Those two words don't go together.
But they can.
Okay,
But they can.
okay.
What?
It's
Fun and blossoms.
Oh. You sound like you speak from.
I use something.
I'm gonna mix it.
I could use, no, no.
Yeah, it's the same. So let's go around. Bring it up to sit.
Happy hour was starting.
That'd be great. You do that one, that my way.
So I'll let that set for just a second.
Okay. It was,
So, moist.
So it's still shiny,
okay,
definitely with the wet stage.
I see, okay.
And when you're working on an angle like this is almost a little bit of an angle. You probably see it's very close to the table here and much further from the table back here. So I'm on about maybe a 10 or 20 degree angle. The top part's going to tend to dry later than the bottom part because all that water and moisture and pigment are going to drip down on the paper. So it'll get a little drier at the top. Which you can already see that sheen is changing. It's almost matte there, it's still wet at the bottom. But this is at a fun stage. I'm just going to, I don't know if you can see my water cup here. I'm just going to dip my fingers in there and then flip. And that's just plain water, and you get all these mini blooms. Totally
Now, what did you
random.
do again to get that?
I just dip my fingers in the water
Yeah,
like that, just not all the way, just the tips of them, just to
Yeah.
get some water on them, and then I just flip the paper.
okay,
And just flip
flipped it.
flip it on the paper. And you can also use, you can use a brush with some water in it. And I've tapped it just a little bit to get the excess off, but I'll just tap it on the brush here. And that creates texture as well. And then I'm going to paint. And as you can tell, when you're doing the spattering, I'm not sure if it shows up well. You're gonna get random splashes of paint
Mm.
in different places. So if you want this effect on part of your painting, cover the rest of it. I have a stack of scrap paper near my easel at home. And so when I'm doing that splashing or flicking water in, if I don't want to get the sky, I just want to get the grass in the foreground, I'll put paper above it across the sky. So I'm not getting any texture there. We just want to leave the part that you want exposed. So another technique with water that is, I call it running. I'm not sure if there is a technical name for it. This is something Dan Marshall does a lot too, and I've seen some other people do. I like this brush is just the right softness, I think, for flicking in water or dropping water in. I use this for softening edges and things. It's just the right texture for me. But what I'll do is grab some clean water. And I'm gonna tilt this up so it's very steep. And then I'm gonna drop water right across the top. And just let it run. And you're gonna create texture because it's gonna pick up the texture of the paper. It's gonna deposit clumps of pigment in different places. But you can get, for example, if you have a foreground area, whether it's water or grass or whatever, and you want to have the darkness at the bottom part so that your eyes are being put up into the painting, you can do this effect and it'll create a lighter to darker gradation in that area, while also creating random texture. And this is totally non-destructive, so if you want, you can let that dry, paint over it, glaze over it. I could go in now and charge paint. We'll try that, see what happens. I'll grab some cobalt blue, some nice thick paint. When you're charging thick paint into wet paint, you want nice thick paint. And so it just drops there, and there. But that's charging paint. So you're putting thick paint into wet paint. And it's some of it's going to stay, some of it'll fade. But that's just charging. So you can add contrast, you can add variation of colors, you can let colors mix on the page doing this. And drop in some raw sienna.
Yeah.
But it's kind of wet and wet, but you're specifically going in with thick pigment into wet pigment. And so you're not losing all of the shape. It's just softening out in different degrees. And then you can flip more paint, flip more water. Because why not? Just more texture. And maybe this isn't something you would think you could really use for anything, but maybe you want to do an anti-strack style background and have very random wet and wet look with some texture in it. Let's try. Let's put one. See if we can. Well, let's use this. You can also just use a paper towel to lift, obviously. So I'm going to make a twist this into shape. And then push it in. And just lift out some random texture. All experimenting. I find it endlessly fun.
Can I try your wax resistant
Yes,
shades?
absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to try the candle or some of the sponges or sandpaper, palette knives, salt. just let me know.
I've done a smaller natural sponge, very different character,
Oh, is it?
yeah. Which is a fun thing to do.
Yeah, no, try it.
Sure. Well,
So this is, again, different kinds of natural sponges. You're gonna get different textures. So you try this one and see what you get.
the candies that are in the- Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a neat texture.
If you're looking smaller.
Mhm.
So you do that in person.
Yes. You know, the only ones that I saw. I'll look like that. That seems to.
Sometimes you drive it out.
My salt in here. I'm getting much texture there. This one's still a little bit wet, but I'm gonna go ahead and take the salt off this one and. Yeah, I can tell there's not much going on there, so I'll try a different pigment. I know with indigo it works pretty well. Try. Yeah, I don't really can do anything wrong. Very little. This is just a wash of some leftover ultramarine blue, but mostly indigo. Which is what I used to have. I'm just gonna let that set for a minute. And we're not gonna have time tonight to do it, I don't think, but can give you all some homework, optional homework. So what I was thinking about trying when I was doing this earlier was, I thought it would be neat to try a dark background and flick a little bit of water into it while it's moisture wet, so you can get some of the texture, but it'll soften out. And then when the timing is right, using a palette knife to scrape out some branch or trunk texture and shape, and then sprinkle some salt where the leaves would be. And so what you're doing is basically just painting a square or a rectangle, and then everything else is just texture. So you're just using the water for maybe some stars or snow, scraping out with a palette knife or credit card or a fingernail or the back of a brush or whatever you want to use for the trunk and tree branches, and then sprinkle some salt in for some texture where the leaves would be. And I thought that might be a neat experiment. And we can try different colors. That's about ready now.
Do the four seasons.
You could do the four seasons with it, absolutely. You could paint some, you could do an autumn colored background, you could do an evening colored background.
So when I spaced out in one place, they turned dark, the ones, and the other place they white. So
Mine did that because I tried to lift off the color and it ran into the,
that's what it's into,
and it looked cool.
It's a little,
but it's supposed to be light color, right?
Normally, but that's what mine did.
It is when you scrape too early,
Too early.
it'll fill in with the pigment, you get the dark line, which can also be a technique you use to get the texture or the look that you want. If you have a line of trees in the background of the painting and you want to have some little darker trunks showing, you can go in while it's wet, scratch in, and those scratches will fill in with paint, giving you dark trunks and branches. And then you can wait until it's dried a little bit at the moist phase and go with the scraper and other areas and make that with the white trunks and branches. And then you've got a little bit of everything going on. That was the fine grain. I'm gonna put a coarse grain. I might have. We'll see. I might have waited too long. We'll see.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's cool. But you'd have to draw to get it accurate.
Is that the way I should do?
Yeah, I was saying like for the broken heart, it's cool, but if you wanted to do a burn or something, then you should draw it first. So you get it.
Oh, that's, yeah, that's.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not required.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
But you
Yeah.
can't see it, so you wouldn't know where to put it.
Right, so when I use wax
You
resist,
see my
I put it
wax
on first, so
Yeah.
I can know, and
That's
if I want, you know, highlight.
Smiley face.
fountain,
Smiley
you
face.
just
Yeah.
do it with that,
That's
or
cool.
water stream. Use the rest of the splashing.
And I love the ceramic.
I love ceramic. Yeah. I have to say, I don't use it often, but I do love it.
Okay, let's see if anything happens there. Just for fun. Maybe too late. Maybe too dry. First. I mean, this almost makes me think the way it's positioned there is like mountains in the background, a little bit of snow on them.
Now the mountains are really coming out.
Okay.
Wow.
I like what happened here. Still wet enough. I can.
So what was your process? What did you do again?
So for the blue in the background there was just the sponge that Bruce has, the little, it's like a
Mhm, I
clincher
saw,
hole.
yeah.
Yep. So I just dabbed that in the background with some blue. And then when it dried, I just realized it kind of gave the feel of like distant mountains.
Yeah,
With
yeah.
little snow on them.
Yeah.
And so I just tried to give it a little bit more shape and shadow and then put some water in the foreground. Just for fun.
Very cool.
It's all just playing with this. Like letting this wash move around. So kind of an inspiration.
Yeah.
A little something going on here.
Is that socks?
It is, yeah, I put a little bit of both of the salts on there, so you can see the coarse surf stuff. There you go. A little bit of the
Wow.
finer color stuff.
It's all still there, you haven't.
Correct. Yeah, I'm gonna wait till it totally dries before I take the salt off. And I'll show y'all too, when you get to a point where you have a bead of water or pigment like this,
Yeah,
if I let that sit and dry,
Yeah.
it's gonna dry faster from the top down.
Yeah.
And then I'm gonna have a bead of water here, and that's gonna create a bloom, because I'm gonna have drier paper and wet paper, and the pigment's gonna wanna push back up to the dry. And the water and the pigment will wanna push back up.
so it will make it bloom
will
above
create a-
that bead.
Yes.
Okay.
So what do you do?
I'll show you right now, I'm gonna take a damp brush, I wanted to wet it to get the bristles soft, but I'm taking the water out of it. And without touching the paper, I'm just gonna put the tip right into the pigment there.
Yeah,
Just lift some of it out.
thirsty brush.
It's a thirsty brush, and so I'm not touching the paper because I don't wanna leave a mark there. Like if I were to go in and dab it, it could leave a white spot or highlight. So you just touch the puddle. And it'll lift that out.
So Ken has the reason we do it. At the tape at the bottom.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Bruce is making a good point.
Water will bead up right down there.
Yeah, so if I had a
People
piece of
take a
tape
tissue
here,
and run it, yes, yes.
you'd have that little lip. And you can have water that settles in that little crease of the tape. Or you can have drops sitting on the tape. And if you tilt your board or tip it up and those drops run into your painting, bloom nightmare. That's gonna be an unintentional blossom, and you're not gonna like that. So Bruce is just saying you can take a paper towel or a damp brush, earthy brush, I mean. And I usually use a paper towel, just right along that tape edge. I'll just scrape across and lift all the paint and water off. And I can even overhang the edge of the tape a little bit right into the bottom of the painting and dry that edge to eliminate any chances of blossoms along that edge. But I've had situations where I've taped my painting all down and I do a nice big wash in the sky. And I want to get that extra paint and water that's on the tape and outside of my painting off the board. And I push down on the tape
Yeah,
and scrub across, and it pushes water out that got under the tape
oh,
into my sky. And it created a blossom all the way across the top.
oh,
Wasn't the end of the world because it didn't go very far and I could just crop it with a frame or
I
mat.
was gonna say.
Yeah, you get creative that way when those things happen. You start to find all kinds of fun solutions.
Especially if you make your own frames and your own
Yeah.
mat,
Yep,
yeah.
you can see what the splashing down and lots of fun stuff. Everybody online having fun with this? Excellent, excellent.
Hey Devin,
Yes,
what did you call it when you put the water at the top of and let it wash down?
I just call it running. I don't know what the technical term is for it, but when I'm thinking about it in my head, I just want those runs. I want the paint and the water to just run down the page. It'll push some of the pigment down. So you get that natural, the natural kind of graded effect.
Yeah,
Right
yeah.
at the top, and then it'll consistently push less pigment as it runs down. As long as you don't oversaturate it, of course. If you put too much water in there, it'll almost give you just a flat wash effect because it can take as much pigment off as it can. But yeah,
Yeah.
do it just a little bit and kind of keep feeding water in at the right pace and give it, so you're controlling it a little bit. Then you can get that kind of effect where it just gives you that natural graded effect. But sometimes too, it didn't do it so much in here. You can see a little bit of the dark streaks, but you can be more random with it too. So you don't have the smooth effect across the whole thing. I could put more water on this side and really let it run a little less here. So it can be darker. You can do that, try and kind of match if I have like a cluster of mountains here And here, maybe in the between, I would want to put a bunch of water and let the reflection kind of run out. And so where
Yeah.
the mountains are would have reflections of more pigment, would be more washed out in the middle. But it's just a way of doing it in a little bit of more random way. You're kind of letting the watercolor have some control and let it do its own thing. I think that's when the most beautiful stuff happens with watercolor, is when you kind of nudge it and hint at what you want it to do and then let it do its thing. It can work
Yeah.
magic. Yeah. And
Yeah, that's really neat. Fun to play with. And is the pigment below that the water's going into still pretty wet?
down here,
Yeah.
yes, that'll be the last part to dry.
Okay. Yeah. And even at the point where you start adding the water at the top, you
Yeah,
would
I
just
would pretty much put the water in like while it's wet. I mean, you can do it at any stage, you'll just get less of the pigment running off. The more dry, the drier it is, the less pigment will run off. So you can time it to get kind of the effect you want. If you put the pigment down in the wash and then immediately put water in it, you might end up almost white paper at the top. But if you let it sit for a few minutes, it'll stain a little bit, tint a little bit, dry a little bit. So you're gonna get less of that runoff and leave a little bit of the color there.
yeah.
So just that way you have some control over the finished look,
Gotcha.
but still letting the watercolor work its magic.
Yeah, neat. Okay, thanks.
You bet. I thought real quick too, I would just show the magic eraser. And I'll do it up here since it's really much not doing anything with the salt. But if I add, don't have any tape, I'll just use this. So if you wanted to get a nice clean edge lifted out, I'm just gonna use this as a mask. I'd probably put tape down. Just a magic eraser, and this is also destructive. You're not going to want to go back probably and paint after that, but it will lift out a lot of paint. And
Oh, wow.
you can shape this and use it as precise as you want. I've used it in the past where I had my painting all done and dry, and I wanted to have highlight on a sailboat mast, and so I put masking tape down on one side of it and masking tape on the other side. So a really thin exposed line. And then I just hit it with a damp magic eraser, scrubbed it out, and then lift the tape off. And you've got a nice crisp, lighter line that's nice and straight left behind. Which is, you might not get the same kind of look with masking fluid, or if you you can take a very thin piece of tape and put it down and paint around it and then lift the tape off. You might get some running underneath it and you have to clean that up. It's just, it's kind of a nice cleanup tool, is the magic eraser. And you don't need a big piece of it. It's a small piece. Use the heck out of it. Still at the damp stage here. But just been running out of time, I'm gonna go ahead and try and get that salt off, and we'll see if it did anything. So we did a little bit. And so that's an example of how the pigment you use can impact the results you get with the salt. I'm not sure why, or what it is about the pigments that does that. But when I did that with burnt sienna, I didn't time that very well, didn't really get much out of that. Ultramarine blue, didn't get a whole lot out of that. But not like things. Much more back there. So neutral tint works well, indigo works well. Vinegar and gold works well. And this is indigo as well. Get the stuff. So it was a little too dry up here when I put the salt in. And it was wetter down here and I got more of the effect. So it's just a timing issue.
It's funny when it's under that camera lens, it's so much more 3D than like when you look at it.
Yeah, there's more contrast, I think, on the camera
Yeah.
than in person.
Can
Yeah.
see him up
Good point.
close.
Absolutely. Everybody have fun with the textures?
Yes, thank you.
Great review, thank you.
Good.
for that.
Good. I'm glad.
For some reason,